Hello and welcome to another edition of the Quantum Creating Podcast, bringing the world of the formless into form and other true stories with me, Paul Webb, the Quantum Mentor. And today I have a really special edition for you. Throughout my 3 decades of coaching experience, yep, it really has been that long, I've enjoyed some incredible conversations with some truly amazing people. And I was thrilled to be able to have another one on this episode with world-renowned photographer Juliet Lemon. Now, the reason it's very special is because, incredibly, this was her debut podcast appearance, and you would never know it. Juliet is an amazing woman who has built an amazing business over the past 12 years or so, and she has a really incredible story. She has put so much work in and has had such a varied experience during this last decade or so that you'll enjoy listening to her as much as I did when we recorded this fabulous episode. During our conversation, we talk about how she fell into photography, the running of her exhibitions even though she had no idea really what she was doing. There's a huge lesson there for people who think they have to know how to do something to actually do it, and do it successfully, I might add. How she suffered a bad injury and had to pivot, which is very apt at the moment, wouldn't you say? And how to start with who and what you know. And most importantly, how anything is possible. So grab yourself a pen and a piece of paper, turn off all the distractions, relax, and listen to the amazing Juliet Lemon with me, Paul Webb, on this week's Quantum Creating Podcast. And as always, please share, rate and review this episode. Although I do run a successful coaching practice, I provide this podcast free of charge with no sponsor or advertising, so you can enjoy a content-rich experience. So your help is very much appreciated. But for now, thank you so much, and let's run the episode. Juliet, thank you. Thank you so very, very much for joining me on the podcast today and taking time out of your lockdown day to do so.
Indeed, Paul, thank you so much back at you. It is an absolute honour, and I'm very humbled that I'm joining you on your podcast. I'm very excited about it too.
And I'm very excited as well because when we spoke initially about doing this, you had... let's say slight reservations about why you should be on a podcast, and I think you do yourself a disservice because I know you've got a fabulous story and I know what you do and how you've managed to craft it and develop it over the years is going to be give some great value to my listeners and viewers. Now, you started your photography, was it about 10 years, 12 years ago, something like that?
Yes, 12 years ago. I kind of fell into it, actually.
Okay. Was it a passion of yours? Was it something you wanted to do or planned to do?
No, I never thought I was a creative person.
Ah, interesting.
I know. So I had a lovely job working in recruitment, and I was doing recruitment in the charity sector. And then kind of out of the blue, I had an opportunity to go and work in Africa. It was for a safari company, which the connection was through some lovely family friends who just made a passing comment, and I went out to go and work for them, and I kept that connection going. Right. And then in 2006 I had another opportunity to work back in Africa again, and I said yes. So I packed in my office job and I headed for Africa. Fortunately, it was just before the recession, so right. That actually worked really well. And then, was back in the safari world, launching myself into photography and just really loving it. It just worked.
So did you go out there initially to photograph or was it something completely different?
No, I started off by managing safari lodges.
Okay.
And then the second time around in 2006, I was actually coordinating safaris.
Right.
So I was overseeing the smooth running of safaris that were starting in Botswana and working through up to Zambia. And it was 12-day safaris. I was working with a lovely safari guide, and we would just look after our guests and make sure they had the most phenomenal experience. And then through that, you're living and working in one of the most pristine of the planet.
Right.
a lot of our time was in the Okavango Delta, the Kalahari Desert, the Chobe, and then up over to like the Zambezi area as well. So to not be completely in awe of the natural beauty and get immersed in everything that goes with it, it would be absolutely criminal. And it was there that my passion for photography was found, really. Absolutely loved it. Spent a year just running around Africa, having a ball on safari, photographing animals, and it was fantastic. And then returned to the UK, and I hadn't really thought about the photography thing. I'd invested in good equipment because I knew I was going out there.
Right. And
then around that time, Facebook started happening. So amongst my friends and I, so I reluctantly joined the social networking site, and started posting my Africa photos. Now, at that time, 2007, photos on Facebook weren't as big as they are now. It was a lot of text.
Yeah.
So, and people didn't have access to digital cameras in the palm of their hand, being on their phones. It was quite different back then. So I was posting my photos of, male lions fighting, or a leopard, like doing amazing things in a tree, and elephants, and really amazing wild animal photos. And they did actually stand out. So quite a few people get in touch saying, "Oh my gosh, your pictures are lovely." And I'm like, okay, well, they're kind of my holiday snaps. And but they were a bit different from what was being posted at the time. So I then thought, well, I've got a few options. I could either put the images into stock libraries and sell them that way, or the second option would be to keep control of them and have a couple of exhibitions and see what happens there. So I held 3 exhibitions in quick succession and invited everyone I knew, because you've just got to start with who you know. And I think at the time it was something that was quite different. And fortunately, managed to get quite a good crowd for each event. Sold quite a few photos. I think I drastically underpriced everything, so that's probably where everything went. And then it just kind of put the message out that I was a photographer, and I kind of hadn't really thought of it. I just did it. And then next thing you know, people are getting in touch saying, "Oh, I hear you're back from your travels and you're a photographer." And I'd answer the phone and be like, I am a photographer. And I really wanted to, having left an office world, which I did. I love my recruitment job. I really, really enjoyed it thoroughly. However, frolicking around Africa in the nature and wildlife, and photographing subjects that could potentially kill you, there's something really, really thrilling about that. And I wanted to keep that element of excitement as well as working outside. I really loved being in the elements. So so I just thought about who I knew and what I could do, and just kind of put the word out, and then people were getting in touch and obviously booking me for stuff. So it's kind of crazy how it just happened, and I hadn't really thought that I would be a photographer. It just kind of happened.
Yeah, it's funny because clearly, and now I know you, we've known each other for some years, and I know you're passionate about Africa. And if you don't go back to Africa in certain time periods, you start getting a little bit, you miss it, let's call it that. And I can understand why, having seen some of the photographs and knowing where you've been on that wonderful continent. But what's interesting to me is that you took a job with in one industry and followed a hobby while you were doing it. And in following that hobby, utilize what was available at the time, which was early days Facebook, not to showcase your work, but just to say, have a look at my holiday snaps, aren't they great, kind of thing. I had a whale of a time. Yeah. And because it got a bit of interest, you were able to leverage that. And you were able to use a little bit of what I would call an entrepreneurial spark in hosting exhibitions. All right, you underpriced yourself, but we all do things like that when we start. We don't know our own value, we don't know what we're doing, but it's the doing of it that's the important thing. And I think that's the lesson in what you've just said. And I also know that you had a little bit of a sticky start because you injured yourself, didn't you?
Yes. So the first year of business, as we all know, for those that have done it and are doing it, it's really tough. You just, you know, you're going on gut instinct. You're just making things happen. You're just trying every option, every avenue under the sun, and just really going for it, guns blazing. And fortunately, at the end, well, for me, fortunately, at the end of the first year, things really started to, you know, fall into place and come into fruition. However, at the end of the first year, I also did injure myself. I sprained my ankle quite badly, and it wasn't the end of the world by a long shot. But for that week that I couldn't physically walk, because it was just so swollen, it made me realise that, hang on a minute, if I can't walk, I can't work. If I can't work, I can't earn money. And I didn't have any backup plan. I didn't have anyone to look after me. I just didn't have a plan B, actually. So it made me look into a lot of avenues of what I could do. And at the time, I read a lot of books, so some really good books like The Secret ended up in my lap, and that kind of opened my mind to a lot of things. Rich Dad, Poor Dad, T. Harv Eker's books as well. And I decided to look into property, so to see what I could do, and it seemed like a very good vehicle to provide financial stability if an unfortunate situation like the ankle spraining thing were to occur again.
Right.
So I didn't know where to start with that kind of thing. I didn't want to make expensive mistakes, and through a series of strange coincidences, which were very unexpected, I ended up attending a free seminar about property, and then getting invited to the second part free of charge, which shouldn't have happened, but it did. And then actually decided to take the leap of faith and sign up for a year-long property course, and give myself that education to hopefully build up a little property portfolio, which would then provide a good kind of financial background and to support me if there was an unfortunate situation.
I'm interested, you know, did you just do the property, or over the years have you tried other income streams outside of the photography?
Yeah, so funny enough, at the same time as coming into my second year of business, doing the property thing, I did actually look at network marketing as well.
Okay.
And I did really enjoy that. It was a great product. It was really great bunch of people that I was working with. And I actually did that for a couple of years, I think about 3 or 4 years.
All right, okay.
But it just got to a stage when I had too much on, and really decided, you know what, I need to give everything my full attention. I mean, but the photography my full attention. The property thing was kind of set up. I was kind of not putting the right time and effort into the network marketing, which is a shame, because I do believe in it. And if you do give it your all, you can definitely make it. However, it was important to stick with my passion, photography. And for me, it was the right decision at the right time.
So when you decided to give it your all with the photography, did you have a niche in mind? Did the Africa thing, the safari thing, was that where you were aiming, or was it just any other particular type of photography?
So with Africa, it will always be there. And I, over the years, because I've worked for that safari company, I've lived there in total for about 3.5 years, maybe even longer. So I've kind of got that fulfillment. I did have the option to move there permanently. However, weighing things up, I love my London life. I love the business I've got here. I love a lot of the bonuses that we have in this country. We've got infrastructure, healthcare, justice. You know, we've got a lot of good things going, and it would just be silly for me to walk away from that. And also, I can earn well with my job here, whereas Africa, you got to work. I don't know how I'd be able to replicate that, you know, that earning potential over there with frolicking around the safari world. So I decided to focus on building up the photography world here. And when I came back to the UK, keeping in mind the fun and the danger and the what I love so much about the safari stuff, I thought, what world can I replicate that's in the UK? And like with many things, just start with who you know. And there were 2 areas that I explored. One was the world of gliding. So I knew someone who was a keen glider. So I went to spend a lot of time at the airfield, and I mean, it was a wonderful world. It was really great, and great people. However, I quickly realized that gliders, they did have money, because obviously they had to be able to finance their hobby, but any money they did have, it went onto them flying.
On the hobby, yeah.
You know, and the photos, I couldn't quite see how I could make it work from that. But the other avenue I had was a friend of mine was a sports reporter for one of the national tabloids.
Right, yeah.
And they had just started to report in the motor racing world for the British touring cars. So I kind of offered my services, and I said, look, I'd love to come along to a race, and you know, you're going to be reporting, maybe I can take the photos to accompany the articles, and you know, I could just see what goes and see what happens. So they gave me the accreditation, and I got all the passes and went along to the race circuit, and oh my gosh, it was just such a fantastic world. So we were in the pit lanes, on the grid, we were, you know, in the garages with the teams and the drivers, we're in the media room with the other photographers and the PR people, and it was just like a really fantastic buzz to the world, and it was really fun. And at the time I was one of the only female photographers there, which was quite a fun thing to be. And yeah, just absolutely loved that world. So I did that, as well as just putting the word out to my contacts. So I was building up my corporate photography as well. So doing things from product shoots to headshots, photographing events, launch parties, that kind of thing. As well as building up the wedding photography side. So attending wedding shows, wedding fairs, working venues, and just keeping an ear to the ground of anyone that was getting married. So yeah, building up those different elements. I actually kept the motor racing thing going for quite a long time. I did motor racing for about 8 years.
Wow, okay.
And yeah, and loved it. So I photographed the British touring cars for quite a while, and it was really fun. So during the week I'd be doing corporate photography, Saturday a wedding, and Sunday I'd be at the circuit. So I'd often get a wedding couple call me up the next day after their wedding. So thank you so much. I'm like, oh, I'm at the pit lane. You know, it's like, where are you? I'm at the... So yeah, it was really fun. And I just love the variety. And in terms of the photography, there's so much that I can take from each world.
Yeah.
And incorporate into others. So there's stuff that I've done on safari with sunsets that, you know, at weddings, like, oh my gosh, sunset, bride and groom, let's do this. I did it with a leopard, I know it's going to work. So and then, you know, there's fun stuff like with the cars, obviously the panning. I mean, I did a beautiful engagement shoot out in Spain, and the client had a very snazzy new car, so he wanted his car photographed. So I'm doing these beautiful panning shots of this lovely Lamborghini, and it's just, you know, and I picked that up because I've done the motor racing photography. So there's just...
So it all crosses over nicely. You can take elements from one and bring it into another, which probably a straight wedding photographer wouldn't be able to do, let's say.
Exactly. And there's things that I can take from the wedding world. So like, you know, the portraits and just the lighting and that kind of thing. And I can do when I'm photographing the portraits of racing car drivers. So
I'm interested, actually, Juliet. You mentioned that when you started with the touring cars, it was very male dominated and there were no real other female, certainly photographers there. Did that change at all in your time, in your years with it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I did it for about 8 years. There definitely were more ladies that came through, which was great. So, but obviously, like with most industries, it is male dominated.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. And we spoke also, I know that recently you did a really extreme round the world trip, which just fascinated me. And it fascinated me for a number of reasons, because it was just literally before this pandemic happened and the lockdown happened, and you managed to get, although it was effective, wasn't it, the trip, and you managed to get around before it was all done. But this was a really high end kind of experience. Do you want to just explain a little bit about that for me?
Yes, it is the stuff that dreams are made of. It was absolutely incredible. I got asked to photograph a 26-day around the world trip by private jet wildlife safari.
Very nice.
And I was the official photographer and videographer for it. Right. So I was capturing everything, and it was incredible. We went to 8 countries, and it was basically focusing on the best wildlife in each country. And with all the amazing decadent things of experiencing great culture and, you know, the cuisine, and just having such very exclusive access to things as well. So it was a phenomenal trip. Yes.
Wow. And didn't you were supposed to go to China, but didn't quite make that, did you?
Our first trip was, our first stop was supposed to be China to go and see the panda bears, but yeah, it got cut. So, and it actually worked really well. So fortunately, the trip was about 10 days ahead of kind of the world locking down and airports closing, closing and that kind of thing. So we were ever so fortunate.
Yeah.
And it was just the trip of a lifetime. I think on Instagram this morning I've been posting hot air ballooning over the map.
Yeah, I've seen it. I've seen some of the stuff you've been posting with, you know, the gorillas and the ice monkey. It's staggering stuff, right? It really is.
I know. Trying to make a positive out of every situation. The gift of time that I'm getting from having this pandemic lockdown here in London means that I can actually properly go through my photos and sharing them on Instagram, writing about them, and also for me processing what I've actually just done, because on the trip it is just 100% go all the time.
Right.
You're flying from country to country. You haven't even got time to register the time zones.
Okay.
Every day's jam-packed with activity, so you know you're up super early, and obviously I'm on duty, so I have to be 100% prepared with all my gear on it, and just photographing everything that moves, and also physically as well. I've got so much gear. I mean, I took 3 camera bags, and it was just it's a crazy amount, as well as hard drives and computers and batteries and chargers and stuff.
So even though it's a real high end, and it was really expensive, right? It wasn't a cheap trip up, as you said to me. But and even though that you're seeing some of the most amazing stuff in the world, and even though you're traveling in real luxury, it must have been very tiring, very difficult for everyone on that trip.
Yeah, I mean, it is an endurance test. It really is. And fortunately, we did have first class seats on the private jet, so you could definitely catch up. However, as a photographer, you've also got the editing to do, and
of course,
you know, you're doing such amazing things, and you need to in each country, and the turnaround of photos is really immediate because the guests are wanting the pictures immediately. So I'll be having any chance I can get to edit, be it on the plane, be it on road transfers, or we're just sitting waiting for something and I've got my computer on me, literally to squeeze in a little blitz of time. So yes, the edit is definitely a big challenge to keep on top of for such a long trip like this, and especially when the turnaround is required to be really prompt as well.
But I assume it's essential. I mean, you just have to do it, right? You
do, and us photographers, it's part of the job.
Look at you, us photographers. You've got all the lingo, you know.
So yeah, no, it was an amazing thing. But it's I spend a lot of time doing this kind of thing in the car world, actually, because I used to photograph endurance car racing. So yeah, which was an amazing world. So from the British touring cars, I've done it for a couple of years and I've really enjoyed it, and it was a lovely break from, to my, you know, change of tempo to my week as well. And then I was photographing Brands Hatch one weekend, and I thought, you know what, I've been doing the same circuits, the same teams, the same cars, just different liveries every season. And you know, what could I do that's different? So I, you know, thinking about who I knew, and there was a lovely driver, Darren Turner, who had recently left the touring cars and gone to be a works driver for Aston Martin.
Nice.
He was racing Le Mans. So I thought, oh, well, I've heard it's quite a big race, and maybe I'll just give that a go. So I gave him a call and gave him, I actually had an idea of, obviously that Aston Martin had their own wonderful photographer already lined up for the race. But maybe there was a slightly different angle that I could be photographing from. So I kind of pitched it to Darren, and he passed it on to the PR team, and they thought it was a great idea and said, come along to Le Mans photograph for us. So suddenly I'd gone from the British touring cars to photograph this like 24-hour world famous endurance car race, and it's like, oh my gosh, okay.
That's a bucket list adventure for sure, Le Mans. I mean, it's steeped in automotive history. I didn't know you'd done that actually. I'm quite in awe of that. So that's fabulous. And I love the way you had to sort of come up with an angle to do it. And I think, again, that shows your entrepreneurial spark or your spirit, that sometimes things for us aren't laid out perfectly. I don't think they ever are, really. It's very rare that happens. But we can make it a lot easier on ourselves by looking at things in a different way, and by just thinking to ourselves, how can I or we go about just coming at this from a different place, from a different angle, with a different perspective. And when you do that, I think everything changes.
Yeah, completely. And I think I come from a world where, and I think you do too, like anything's possible.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, I'm sure someone who knows someone who knows someone who can help you with that, or the information's at your fingertips, or probably there's a video on YouTube about it. So if you've got the idea, then just explore the ways of making it work. And usually if you reach out to people and companies or contacts, people are always willing to help. And I
think that's massive. I think we convince ourselves that we can't ask. And I think that, look, obviously when we do ask, there's going to be times when people say, I'm sorry, there's nothing I can do. But we should never be fearful about asking, about approaching people and just saying, I've got an idea. What about this? What do you think?
And what's the worst that could happen? Someone says no. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
But I believe that the people that you've already got in your network, in your world, they're there for a reason.
Of course, yeah.
And it's just, like, when you do need something, you can just reach out and someone will know the right way to point you to.
It's fascinating because you've kind of, I don't know, I'm going to put this actually. So you've been a photographer for 12 years. You've been at the forefront of some amazing change in that world, because as you said earlier, people have got 4K cameras now on their phones. It's incredible. Social media wasn't really a thing when you got started. Now we've got Instagram, now we've got TikTok, we've got all these things that everyone's got access to make their photos look amazing. What's been the biggest change for you, do you think, over the years?
Oh my gosh. I think I don't know. Good question. Obviously the technologies, in terms of the digital action of the cameras, that's amazing. I think the creativity element of it, and people's expectations, coming out right, but just it's just so important. Not that it hasn't been important. I don't know if that's making any sense. No.
Well, I get what you mean. I think that from what I can see of it, and I'm no photographer, right? But I look at things, I look at industries, I research guests for this show and stuff. And I look at it and I think you're absolutely right. I think expectations have changed, because you can use your phone, take a shot of a tree on a hill and send it through an Instagram filter and make it look absolutely incredible, with very little cost, with very little effort. So people, when they hire photographers nowadays, their expectations must be through the roof. So I would imagine, like in any business, you really have to deliver. You really have to go that extra mile to deliver the service that they want, and to deliver more of a service so that you've given absolutely everything you can to that client.
Completely. And I think, like with most industries, it's really, like, it is competitive, because everybody's got a camera in their hand.
Yeah.
Everybody thinks they're a photographer, which they are, but are you making a living out of it, and are people actually paying you for your service? So yeah, it's but it's
I think it's every industry. I mean, in the coaching world, everyone calls himself a coach these days. It's just unbelievable.
But it is, but I think there's things like that which do make it so exciting. So I need to be on top of my game.
Yeah.
And why am I being paid to go to that wedding instead of the guests asking another photographer, or asking So the wedding couple asking, another photographer or one of their guests to do it, and I really need to make sure that I'm pushing myself, I'm learning, I'm growing, and it's very.
So it's an ongoing growth experience. You're always educating yourself. You're always learning new stuff.
Yeah.
That's very important, right?
Yes, there's really great things that happen in the wedding photography world.
Right, okay.
Really, there's like a wonderful network of photographers that I have. There's a great annual conference that I go to in London. There's other ones that you can do all over the world. There's online courses, and there's mentorship. And I think also in terms of the growth as well, because I love photography so much, and I've been able to incorporate it in with another big passion of mine, which is Africa and my travel, that when I do go away, I am hopefully having a bit of chill out time, because I do need it, but I'm excited to be getting my camera, and there's stuff in Africa playing with the harsh sunlight. I love full sunlight, and I often get wedding guests coming up to me saying, "Oh, I bet it must be a tricky day for you today. The sun's shining." I'm like, I love it. What's the matter with that? So, and I really love that, but because I've played so much with it in Africa, that's why I feel so comfortable with it here.
Okay. That's really interesting that you can take one scenario that most people shy away from and you can actually use it to your advantage. I think that's genius, to be fair.
Nothing wrong with sunshine and blue sky. Come on.
No, I totally agree. I love it. But, there are some people that just don't, of course. It takes all sorts, I guess. So what's next for you, Juliet? What's in your plans moving forward after this craziness is obviously behind us?
So yes, when we emerge from this lockdown, looking at the wedding world, obviously this year's completely been disrupted. So I don't know if weddings are actually going to happen this year. I just don't know. I've had many of my 2020 couples have booked through 2021.
Right.
So obviously I've already got my 2021 weddings booked in, and then we're squeezing those ones in. Anyway, so it's going to be just gearing up for very, very busy year, and the following year is going to be hectic as well, in a wonderful way. It's just going to be very, of course.
Yeah, and I think that's the same for a lot of people, isn't it? That things have just been put on hold, basically, and then bang, 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 away we go.
Yeah, exactly. We'll see what the status of travel after this.
Yeah.
Obviously, I would love to get back to Africa. So that's on the cards. I've got some quite exciting things that this lockdown time has been so great to actually take stock of what's important to me and what I've always wanted to do, where I've always wanted to go. So it's just really brilliant to have that time to dream big and then see how I can make those plans happen. So that's currently under construction. What else is going to happen? Yeah, just go out there and just love life again. I mean, loving life now, but just love delivering great photos. It'll be interesting to see what else happens in terms of the private jet travel, that world, because I've had a taste of working in that world. Fantastic. Yeah, just lots of exciting things. Really.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. I love that, and I love that you've been able to come on the show and so articulately give us your story and show us how you can take your passion and develop it and take advantage of it and try new things and be a pioneer and just enjoy yourself as you go along. So, Juliet, thanks so very much for joining me. I know it's been a long time coming, but we got there in the end, and you've nailed it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It's been really fun, and you've been an absolute delight to talk to. And yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And have a fabulous day. Yeah.
Thank you. You too. Take care, Paul.